I'm gonna apologize in advance if my hair does any weird little chicken wing things. I'm kinda having one of those days. Hair troubles aside, today we are going to be talking about photographs I've taken in Ashland, Wisconsin. But wait, before you run away, because you're like, why do I care about a bunch of cheese-eating, brandy-drinking Wisconsin locals? There are some cool history of photography tie-ins that are going to come with looking at these photos, so if that's your thing, don't run away yet, please. And much like the other videos I've been doing where I show photos and talk about them, these were also taken with my large format 8x10 view camera. Not this particular one, the one I had before this, but you should get the point of the kind of gear I was working with when I made these photographs. Let's put him down. For those of you who aren't experts in Wisconsin geography, Ashland sits way on the top of the state, right on the south shore of Lake Superior. Neat little town. My personal history with it is the first job interview I had after college was for a company in Ashland for a position which would be editing training videos for the products they make. It was a fun interview. Like, I drove up there and I brought all my nice clothes and realized the night before the interview that I didn't bring any shoes, so I had to panic and buy shoes real quick, and then did the interview, which I didn't get because, one, I learned that the guy who actually was giving me the interview was also an internal candidate for the same position, so I'm sure that didn't help. But then there was this moment where they walked me into this room and had all this analog VHS editing hardware, and it's just, the guy is basically like, so tell me what all this does. And I was like, all my experience was on a computer with Adobe Premiere or whatever was available back then, so didn't get the job, whatever. And then a few years later, though, I was back and had this excellent moment where I convinced a whole bunch of people at a bar that I was Corey Feldman, just hanging out in the little towns trying to get away from the people. It's all cool. And one guy, when I finally said gotcha, was like, I knew it, I was gonna say something, I knew it. But sure, you should have said something then, buddy. Enough talking, let's look at a few pictures first, shall we? So this first photograph is of ice car racing out in the bay in Ashland. This was taken in March 2013, and I was just driving through Ashland to or back going to Michigan. I forget which direction I was heading, and saw these cars out in the ice. I'm like, that's cool. I need to set up my 8x10 camera and get a picture of this. So that's what I did, and this is the picture you see. So if we zoom in and look at the cars, you can see that they're all kind of banged up. I mean, they're racing on ice. They tend to skid around and bump into each other quite a bit during these races, so you don't get these real pristine looking cars. It's kind of more of a Mad Max racing circuit. Pretty neat stuff, if you say so. And I took one other picture this day, but at the time, the camera I was using had a little bit of a light leak and it threw one across the whole thing, so I'm not even going to bother to show it to you. And the next photo I want to show you real quick is of this memorial, which I took in March 2014, again while driving to Michigan and just passing through Ashland. I saw this big flag, and I'm like, ooh, I like big flags. And then I saw this tree had old Christmas decorations still on it, and I'm also into well out of season Christmas decorations, so yeah, stopped and took this picture. I was kind of up to my knees in snow breaking through. You can't really tell from here, but it was kind of tough to get to this spot. But yeah, there we go. We got an Ashland, Tops, Wisconsin, with a little dot to show you where it is for all of you people brushing up on your geography. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. So of all the pictures that I've chosen to show you today, those first two were the only two not taken on July 9th, 2013. And here's where our photography history lesson begins. Why July 9th? What is special about that day? So go grab your copy of Stephen Shore's Uncommon Places and turn to page 7. What does the first paragraph on page 7 say? It says, on the morning of July 3rd, 1973, Stephen Shore got in his car and set off on a journey across the U.S. On the first day, he had lunch in Easton, Pennsylvania, and dinner in Harrisburg. 3 days later, he arrived in Battle Creek, Michigan, having already covered 1,424 miles. The evening of July 9th, found him in Ashland, Wisconsin. Instead of traveling the next day, Shore took a large plate camera out of his car and stayed in town to capture the local motifs. The old post office, the Army-Navy store, the Art Peterson gun and locksmith shop. 16 pictures in all. Good work considering the cumbersome equipment. So if you are familiar with Stephen Shore's work at all, it's pretty obvious that he's one of my influences in shooting just kind of normal looking stuff, uses a big same camera like that. You know, it might be a reason why I tried that camera in the first place. I believe it is. So when I got this book and first realized that he took all these pictures in Ashland on July 9th, 1973, and it was only a couple months away from July 9th, 2013, I was like, maybe I should find as many of these as I can and on the 40-year anniversary go back and re-photograph them. So I did find a bunch of the photos I took that day, but by the time it came to go myself on that July 9th, I just kind of was like, I'm not going to re-photograph stuff. That's kind of, why spend all this time and effort just duplicating what's already done? I'm going to still go there on this day, but I'm just going to shoot my own photographs in homage to him shooting there 40 years previously. Okay, quick detour from the first part of our history lesson to look at some of my photographs again, but hang in there, there's more. So July 9th, 2013 ended up being a day with a lot of on and off again rainstorms, so I spent a lot of the time sitting in my car waiting for the rain to stop and then jumping out at the scene I think I saw and setting up real quick and shooting before the rain started again, which is kind of neat because normally when I shoot large format it's pretty fair weather. I go out when it's going to be sunny or cloudy and not stormy, but this being the exception, and I wasn't going to put it off another day because that would ruin the 40-year anniversary thing, I had to go out in a rainy day, and as a result a lot of the photos have like a wet sheen to them that I don't often get in my own work, such as this picture right here of this house that had burned down. So this was the first photograph I took on that day, and just kind of drawn to it because general destruction is always a curiosity for people, even if they try to say they aren't curious by it. I don't believe them. So as we see, we got this like just epic fire damage, and you can see the trees nearby kind of being singed from the heat that must have been coming off of this fire. Just not good, right? House fires are never good. The scene as a whole, the green and yellow palette it has, I find it kind of nice. But the problem with this photo is, after I took it and got it developed, I looked up in the news a couple days later, and that's when I indeed discovered that someone died in this house fire. So it's kind of that border of like documentation for the sake of documentation, but like presenting it as like a fine art thing, it's kind of, knowing someone died, it just takes a lot of the wind out of it. So it's not one that I put up for sale, but I do keep it on the website for historical reasons. Moving on, here's another photograph I took that day of the Bayfront power plant that sits on the shore of Lake Superior in Ashland. Just a basic cityscape with a building poking out of it, and to my luck, no security stopped me to call me a terrorist or anything, because, you know, that does seem to happen for people who stop and take photographs of infrastructure building, even though all of it is pretty much available in high detail if you go to Google Maps and poke around. So I won't keep you waiting on that history lesson anymore. Let's continue that, huh? So why did Stephen Shore, when he started this road trip for this series, drive pretty much straight to Ashland, Wisconsin? Well, once again, bust out your copy of the book, and there's text referenced on page 10 and 177 about how he was shooting with a little 35mm snapshotty camera with like a really crappy viewfinder, but then like in the early 70s, an influential man in the photography world recommended that he try shooting with the big view camera so that he would be forced to sit and really think about the composition of his images. And the man who recommended that he try this bigger camera was none other than Ashland, Wisconsin's own John Scharkovsky. Or is it Scharkovsky? I'm gonna break off this history list for a moment and just, Polish names in America are kind of like the worst thing in the world. It's like, on the one hand, you have families like mine who are like, we'll just let the letters sound like how the English will say it so we fit in. And on the other hand, you got the people from Poland come over and they're like, ha! Screw those English tongues. We're gonna stick to how we say it. And people speak English are just like, I don't know what to do because these words are so hard. And there's like 58 consonants in a row. But, so you never really know if the family goes by like the English kind of hacked pronunciation of the name or the classical Polish. I even went to high school with families, 2 different families with the exact same Polish last name. One pronounced it like an American would, and the other pronounced it like the Polish would, and it's really confusing. So if I say the wrong one at any time during this video, that's why, and I don't mean any disrespect. So anyways, back to John Scharkovsky, born and raised in Ashland, Wisconsin, where these pictures were taken. The quick and dirty of his history is that, and I've gone over this in other videos, so if this is deja vu, that's why you probably watched the old video. So Scharkovsky became like the head photography curator at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, I think in the 60s, early 70s, somewhere around there. And this is still a period when fine art photography meant black and white. Color, that's for selling shit. Black and white if you're an artist. That's also the time when people like Stephen Shore and William Eggleston and others were starting to shoot more color as fine art, and Scharkovsky was a curator who started like promoting shows and giving them big gallery shows of their photography in color, and was like really pivotal in transforming color photography into being acceptable as a fine art. So although I haven't found any like interviews or anything directly that said this is the reason why he went to Ashland first, I just assume that he went there out of homage to John Scharkovsky. So that's your kind of neat little Ashland, Wisconsin history lesson and how it relates to fine art photography. So, and a little fun tie-in to the Ashland fine art history. A couple years ago, I found a photograph taken by William Eggleston of a PBR sign hanging off a building, much like the kind of stuff I've been shooting lately, and I was like, oh, that's cool. He did it too back in 1982. And when I searched the name of the company on the sign, Dewey's Superette, bing! Ashland, Wisconsin. So, at some point as well, Eggleston made his way up there to Ashland and took some photos as well. Again, no documentation on why he was in Ashland himself as well, but it's interesting that he too went to the area and took some photos. So it's kind of why I like to shoot pictures in Ashland, Wisconsin when I drive through it any now and then. It just feels like there's a history to the roots of getting color photography popular that I like to pay a little click service to. Okay, I've got a few more photos left in this, and we're just gonna probably speed around through them. Ready? Next picture. Let's go. So here we have a photo of the Sioux Line ore docks being destroyed. So here's the thing about this photograph. You know how I said Shore was told to use a view camera to really stop and focus on the composition? Yeah, this one I've never shown because I hate the composition I made. It's just awkward to me. This is like the last photograph I took of the day, so I'm sure my head was just frazzled from taking all these photos of this camera because, like I said, it is a physically demanding camera to use, and running in and out between the reins, and ugh. When I was reviewing it to consider putting it in this video, it dawned on me. It was shot on a big old 8x10 negative. This is the actual negative of this photograph. And the thing that this negative lets you do is crop a whole lot. Like, I could take that big camera, take the exact same lens that I shot this picture on, put it on my smaller camera of the similar style that takes a negative of this big, and essentially just shoot the top right corner of this. So now when I crop this photo out to just be kind of the top right corner where all the interesting, historically relevant stuff is, it actually works as a photograph, and hell, maybe I can bring this to light now that I've had this revelation. Cool. Okay, and now here we have a hockey rink, except get this, it's summer. Haha, no ice, grass in a hockey rink, it's mind-blowing. Next photo. This is one that I seem to recall having to sit and wait for the rain to break to run out and shoot it. I saw this area, these wonderful green trees coming up over this shed, and this car, and the part of the roof is broken, and just it says so much about America, and sorry, that was all a lie. I actually hate to admit this, but I saw parking lot 8 over here with the red and orange, and my brain thought of the Windows 3.1 theme hot dog stand and was like, I gotta photograph this. I'm sorry. I know art is supposed to be deep and meaningful, but this is the kind of weird shit that'll make me stop and take a picture. That's the truth of it, and I'm not nearly as deep as many artists try to present themselves as. Next photo. So here we have the Grand Opera House in Ashland, Wisconsin, built in 1893. Except if you are keen to noticing stuff, this is the back of the building and not the front. Why the back and not the front? Well, let me tell you. Do you think the front of the building has this mosaic of pastel painted plywood on it? Do you think the front of the building has random door that you just fall off and break your leg if you walk out of it accidentally? Back of this building, far more interesting than the front of the building, if I don't say so myself. Okay, one more photo. We have, once again, the back of a building. I know, maybe the theme of this trip was look in the back for something to crack. I don't know. But I just kind of was walking around the block and turned the corner, and the back of this white old church with all the rotting, peeling paint off it, and the building next to it kind of being in a similar state of disarray, just kind of one of those things you look at and just clicks like, that's a good photo. The composition is all right there, so set it up and took the picture. We got some neat details in here, like, oh, this is July and there's still some Christmas art in the window. Again, out of season Christmas decorations, one of the best things to photograph. I might even have enough of those in the backlog to do a whole video on. Maybe I'll have to look into that. Let's see, we got some kids' toys, a mailbox, just a lot. If peeling paint is your kink, this is a print you probably want to buy. Link in the description to my shop where you can buy anything in this video. But yeah, more peeling paint, and peeling paint. So there we go. That is photographs I've taken in Ashland, Wisconsin, and a little history lesson for you if you've never been aware of John Scharkovsky and his influence in the photography world, and how he came from the tiny little town of Ashland, Wisconsin. So if you're ever driving through the region, stop and take a photograph in homage. Make it a thing. Huh? Make Ashland popular? We can do this. So I guess that's going to be the end of this video. If it's your first time here, subscribe. That's cool. Subscribes are nice. And if you made it this far, you probably should also like on it. And I guess if you want to say something, leave a comment. Till next time.